I always knew I was an afterthought, not in the dramatic, movie of the week kind of way, but in the quiet, soul-bruising way that creeps into your bones over time, until one day you realize you've spent your whole life trying to earn love that was never yours to begin with. My name is Madison, and I'm 37 now, but I still remember the way my mother used to say it with a soft sigh. "We didn't plan for you." She never said it angrily, never shouted it in frustration. That almost made it worse. It was always this calm, almost affectionate tone, like she was explaining the weather. We had Emily already. She was more than enough. Emily, 10 years older, perfect grades, debate team star, prom queen, destined for Harvard Emily. Our house might as well have been a museum built in her honor. Her certificates, her baby pictures, her trophies filled every shelf. Our dinner table revolved around her updates, her needs, her plans. Me? I was the kid whose 10th birthday was forgotten because they were helping Emily prepare for a college interview. I still remember the sinking feeling when my mom pulled out a leftover cake, Emily's name still on it, and said, "We didn't have time to get another one, but it's chocolate, your favorite." Even my father, a man of few words, would hand me off to my grandparents every morning with a joke that didn't feel like a joke. "You wanted her," he'd say to my grandpa, jingling his car keys. "She's all yours today." And they truly did want me. My grandparents were the only people in my childhood who looked at me like I mattered. My grandfather, a retired math professor, taught me to love numbers, not just because they added up, but because numbers never lie, he'd say. People might, feelings might, but numbers tell the truth. My grandma taught me how to read, how to cook, how to believe I was worth something. She never once compared me to Emily. When I came home with an A in math, she clapped with both hands and baked me cookies. When I lost a spelling bee, she hugged me and said, "At least you stood up there. That takes guts." She once whispered to me, "You're the best thing that ever happened to us, Madison." And I clung to that sentence like a life raft. It kept me afloat during every school event my parents didn't attend. Every recital they missed, every chore dumped on me because Emily had too much on her plate. When I was 14, my role in the house shifted from ghost to maid. I'd barely stepped through the door after school before hearing, "Madison, clean the bathroom. Dinner better be ready by 6. Emily's chores became mine. Then, mine grew into full-on household management. But I never let it affect my grades. School became my escape. I poured everything into my studies, my competitions, my dreams of going to college far away, of building a life no one could take from me. I remember the night I opened 3 acceptance letters, one from New York University, one from Wharton, one from a top-ranked finance school in Boston. I placed them carefully on the kitchen table, heart pounding, waiting for a reaction. My mom barely glanced up from her plate and said, "That's nice, honey, but we spent everything on your sister's wedding. There's nothing left for college." And just like that, everything snapped. But that wasn't the end. That moment, it was the beginning. When I told my parents I couldn't afford college on my own, my father didn't look up from the TV. My mother kept clearing the dishes. Their silence rang louder than any rejection ever could. "That was different," my mother said. "We saw potential in Emily." I don't know what hurt more, the words themselves or the calm, unapologetic way she said them. Like I hadn't spent years proving myself in every class, every exam, every sleepless night juggling school and chores. I wasn't asking for a mansion or a handout, just a chance. I still remember grabbing my phone with trembling fingers and walking outside, barely able to breathe. I called my grandmother, and when she picked up, I couldn't even form a sentence. I just cried. Less than an hour later, I was standing on her front porch, clutching a duffel bag with the only things that felt like mine. My grandfather opened the door and pulled me into the tightest hug. No questions, just warmth. They already knew. I sat down at their kitchen table, the place where I had once learned to multiply fractions and peel potatoes. With tears running down my face, I told them everything. My grandfather stood up without a word and disappeared into his study. A moment later, he came back holding a thick folder. He placed it gently in front of me. Inside were years of bank statements, bonds, savings accounts, money they had been quietly setting aside for me since the day I was born. We knew this day might come. he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. You pick any school you want. We've got you. I didn't even try to hold back the tears. That night, I moved in with them permanently. I didn't say goodbye to my parents. I didn't need to. As I carried my suitcase out of the house, my mother said without turning her head, "Whatever you think is best." She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't stop me. Maybe she thought I'd be back. Maybe she didn't care, but I never returned. College was hard, not because of the classes. I loved every minute of those. It was hard because it was the first time in my life I was around people who had been raised with encouragement, with support, with belief. They had parents who visited during move-in day, who called to check on them, who sent care packages. I had no voicemails, no texts, just a pair of aging grandparents who mailed handwritten notes and never missed a single milestone. And that was enough. At school, I finally began to discover who I was without the weight of neglect pressing down on me. I thrived in my finance courses. Numbers made sense. People lied. Numbers didn't. I dove into internships, case competitions, anything that would let me prove myself. During my sophomore year, a professor pulled me aside after class. "You have a mind for this, Madison," he said. "You think 5 steps ahead. That's rare." For the first time, someone outside my grandparents believed I could be more than someone's forgotten child. I spent holidays with friends or alone in my dorm, while Emily posted family photos by the fireplace on Facebook, my parents standing behind her like proud statues, the twins dressed in matching sweaters. I was never invited, but I was building something. Quietly, steadily, a life. I didn't know then that everything I was building would one day collide with the very family that had left me behind. But that's the thing about distance. It gives you perspective. And I was beginning to see things more clearly than ever before. By the time I graduated college with honors, Emily's life had taken a different turn. While I was poring over spreadsheets in Manhattan skyscrapers, Emily was bouncing between short-lived marketing jobs, each one ending in, "They just didn't value me." She had married James, a tall, well-dressed man who gave the impression of success, but none of the stability. My grandparents were the only ones who ever called to celebrate my promotions. My parents never asked what I did or where I worked, and I never offered. Silence had become our family's native language, but that silence started to crack when Emily and James could no longer afford their rent. I heard it first from my grandmother over a quiet phone call. "They moved back into your old room, Madison," she said gently, like it was supposed to mean something to me. It didn't, not anymore. They had taken over the house, Emily, James, and their 7-year-old twins. The same home my parents couldn't make time to help me clean as a child was now crammed with coloring books, plastic toys, and the noise of a family that never stopped expecting. Meanwhile, I had spent the last decade building my own life. I had worked my way up to a senior management role at a top investment bank in New York. The bonuses were generous, the title impressive. I bought myself a modest modern condo just outside the city, where I could sip my coffee in peace every morning and remind myself, "You did this. No one gave it to you. But the world has a way of tilting when you least expect it." My grandfather, the man who taught me to balance a checkbook and believe in myself, died suddenly from a heart attack. The call came just after midnight. I didn't even let the phone finish ringing before I answered. I was on the first flight home the next morning. The ache in my chest felt like a hole that couldn't be filled. He wasn't just my grandfather. He was the father I never had. 2 months later, my grandmother passed away too. After the funeral, I stayed behind to finalize her arrangements. I found myself sitting in their quiet kitchen, staring at the worn wood table where I had once done my homework as a little girl. The silence was different now. Not cold, just gone. That's when my mother appeared in the doorway. She looked older, exhausted in a way that went deeper than wrinkles or gray hair. "Madison," she said, voice cautious, "do you need help with the funeral plans?" I blinked. She hadn't asked me a question like that since I was a child. For a second, I almost believed we could start over. "Sure," I said. "That would be nice." Over the next few days, as we picked out flowers and coordinated the service, they began to open up, just a little. My father admitted they were struggling. Emily's family had drained their retirement. The house was falling apart. They didn't say it outright, but the implication hung in the air. They needed help. For once, I felt like I had the upper hand, and I didn't feel guilty about it. Then came the will. We gathered in a quiet wood-paneled office that smelled of furniture polish and old paper. Emily sat beside James, smug and relaxed. My parents looked curious, expectant. But when the lawyer opened his folder and read the words, "To our beloved granddaughter Madison, we leave our house at 1542 Maple Street and the sum of $150,000. The room went still. Emily's smile dropped. My mother's face turned from pink to chalk white. My father looked down at the floor. The lawyer continued reading, but I didn't hear much after that. My heart was pounding. The house, the home I had grown up in. It was mine now. It was their last act of love, and it was about to become the first domino in a chain of consequences none of us could take back. The shock of the will reading hadn't even fully settled before my parents approached me outside the notary's office. The sun was setting, casting long shadows on the sidewalk, but I remember every detail, the tremble in my mother's voice, the way my father couldn't quite meet my eyes. "Madison, honey," she began, holding her purse like it was a shield. "You must understand. We always assumed the house would go to us. We were counting on it." I stood there, stunned, as they pleaded with me in turn. My mother talked about the mortgage, the kids, Emily's family. My father mumbled something about a yard for the twins and how hard things have been. And then Emily chimed in, arms crossed, smug as ever. "I mean, we already started moving in," she said, like it was no big deal. "We thought you'd understand. You have your own place. What do you even need with this house?" That sentence lodged in my chest like a splinter. What do I need with it? I needed it because it was the only place that ever felt like home. I needed it because it held every ounce of love my grandparents ever gave me. I needed it because it wasn't just a house. It was proof that someone finally saw me, chose me. I didn't say a word. I got into my car and drove away. Over the next few weeks, I was torn. I had no intention of moving into the house. It was too big for me, too full of ghosts. But I couldn't ignore what my grandparents had done. They had made their choice. And yet, my parents and Emily continued calling like nothing had changed. My mother left voicemails asking when I was going to hand over the keys. Emily sent me texts with logistics for the twins' new bedrooms. There was no request, just assumption. Then, one evening after work, scrolling through Facebook, I saw it. A post from Emily. "Can't wait for this Saturday's housewarming party for Mom and Dad. So excited to celebrate their beautiful new home." I felt the blood drain from my face. There were photos of decorations being prepped, a banner that read "Welcome Home, Caterers Tagged," dozens of RSVPs from family and friends. The housewarming wasn't just planned, it had been in the works for weeks, and I hadn't been invited. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, my house, my grandparents' final gift, and they had turned it into their celebration. The next morning, I called my mother. "Hey, Mom, just checking. Any update on the housewarming party date?" "Oh, not yet, sweetie," she said breezily. "We're still working out the details." Still lying, still pretending. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just hung up and made a decision. That Saturday, I parked my car a block away. Through the windows of the home I owned, I watched them celebrate. My father giving tours, my mother standing at the door in pearls, Emily basking in compliments, guests eating catered food on the porch like it was theirs. No one, not one person, seemed to care that I was missing. Until I stepped through the side entrance. I stood in the doorway for a beat. Then I said it, loud and clear. "Actually, I think you've got that backwards." The room fell silent. Plates paused midair, conversations halted. All eyes turned to me. My father blinked. "Madison, what a surprise." "No," I said. "What's surprising is forgetting to invite the person who bought this house." That's when the truth unraveled, faster than I imagined. Emily's face went pale. My mother stammered. My father's expression hardened. "You're not welcome here," he said. "This is a family event." I took out the folder from my purse, the deed, the ownership papers. "You're standing in my house," I said, calm but shaking inside, "and I never signed it over to anyone." What followed was chaos, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one apologizing. I was reclaiming. The silence that followed my words was deafening. My mother's face went sheet white, her lips trembling. My father looked as though someone had just slapped him across the face. Emily's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her smug confidence drained in an instant. The party guests, caught mid-bite, stared in stunned disbelief, unsure if they were witnessing a meltdown or the climax of a reality TV show. "This house is legally mine," I said, holding up the deed in one hand. "I never signed it over to anyone. I was going to, tonight. That was the plan. I thought maybe this could be a fresh start, but now, I'm not so sure." "You can't do this," my mother snapped, finally finding her voice. "We're your parents." "And I was your daughter," I said quietly. "But that never seemed to mean much unless I was cleaning your bathroom or babysitting your grandkids." My father stepped forward, his voice cracking. "You don't understand, Madison. We need this. We counted on this." "Counted on what?" I shot back. "That I'd always be your fallback? That I'd keep giving and giving just because I was too afraid to say no?" Behind them, Emily's husband James shifted uncomfortably. The twins peeked out from the hallway, confused and anxious, sensing that something had gone horribly wrong. Emily finally broke her silence. "We already sold our house, Madison. The kids were excited. You can't just ruin everything." I looked her straight in the eye. "I didn't ruin anything. You did. You threw a housewarming party for a home you don't own. You lied to your friends, to our family, and the worst part? You didn't even bother to ask." My mother's voice shrilled with desperation. "We raised you. We have rights." "No," I said firmly. "You gave birth to me, but my grandparents raised me. They saw me. They taught me what family actually means: unconditional love, not manipulation; support, not guilt." The room was ice cold now. You could practically hear hearts thudding. Then I turned to the guests, most of whom were now awkwardly backing toward the door. "I'm sorry," I said to them, "but this party is over. I'm asking everyone to leave. This is private property." The stampede was almost comical. Plates were left half-eaten, drinks abandoned on windowsills. Someone tripped over a toy in the hallway. My parents stood frozen, and Emily stormed past me, dragging her twins with her. On the porch, my father tried once more. "You don't have to do this. You can still make things right." I looked at him, not angry anymore, just done. Number. "You could have made things right a long time ago, and you didn't." I watched them all drive away, one by one, through tear-streaked windows and hollow glares. I was left standing alone in the house I had tried to make a gift, now echoing with betrayal. Later that night, I sat on the living room floor surrounded by uneaten cake and discarded party favors. The house smelled like roses and hurt feelings, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The next morning, my phone exploded. Voicemails, texts, emails. Some from extended family I hadn't spoken to in years. Others from people I barely remembered from high school. Word had spread fast, and as usual, the story being told wasn't mine. Emily had already gone online, spinning a tale about how her ungrateful sister had kicked their aging parents and two innocent children out onto the street. Her post was dripping with faux sincerity, complete with a photo of the twins hugging their suitcases, captioned, "Heartbroken but staying strong." There were hundreds of likes, sympathy comments, people offering furniture, a place to stay, and in true Emily fashion, she made sure to include her Venmo handle, just in case anyone wanted to help. My hands shook as I scrolled. What they didn't know, what no one seemed to know, was that for over 3 decades, I had been the ghost in my own home. Invisible, dismissed, used. No one had seen me cleaning the bathrooms while Emily got piano lessons. No one saw me walking home alone from school while they picked out her wedding dress. No one cared that I bought this house, but they sure cared that I'd taken it back. For the first 24 hours, I tried to ignore it. I went for a run, ordered in Thai food, and tried to convince myself I'd done the right thing. But the guilt? It still crept in, like a slow leak under a closed door. It wasn't about the house anymore. It was about decades of being told that choosing myself made me selfish. That evening, the doorbell rang. I checked the camera. My father. Not Emily, not my mother. Just him, standing alone in a windbreaker he used to wear back when I was in high school. He looked older than I remembered, tired, smaller. I hesitated, but something in me told me to open the door. "Hi," he said, "and can we talk?" I stepped aside, not warmly but not coldly either. He didn't sit. He just stood there in the middle of the living room, eyes scanning the space like he was trying to remember if it had ever really belonged to him. "We messed up," he said, "a long time ago. We let things get so twisted." I said nothing. "I'm not here to make excuses. I just wanted you to know. I see it now. What we did to you, what we let happen." I finally spoke. "Why now?" His shoulders dropped. "Because I saw your face last night. You looked done, and I realized we've taken everything, your childhood, your peace, your generosity, and we still wanted more." He wiped his eyes, embarrassed. "Your grandfather once told me that sometimes the best parent is the one who shows up after they've failed. If you'll let me, I'd like to show up now." The tears came harder than I expected, not because everything was magically fixed, but because for the first time in my life, my father saw me. We stood there for a moment, not speaking, just breathing. When he left, he didn't ask for anything, not the house, not forgiveness, just space to rebuild something broken. I don't know what comes next, but for the first time in a long, long time, I think I might be okay with that. For a brief moment after my father left, I allowed myself to believe that things might change, that maybe, just maybe, his acknowledgement marked the beginning of something healing. But Emily had other plans. By Monday, I was trending in the local Facebook mom groups under the headline, "Heartless Banker Kicks Out Elderly Parents and Innocent Children." A former high school classmate sent me a screenshot. There was a photo of me in a blazer cropped from a company headshot beside a teary-eyed selfie of Emily and her twins. It felt like being smeared in public by a family I used to beg to love me. The worst part wasn't the lies, it was how believable they sounded. Because for most of my life, they'd done a great job painting me as cold, overly ambitious, and distant. Now, all they had to do was add vindictive to the list. I wanted to scream, "I bought that house. I offered to give it to them. They shut me out." But I didn't. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I didn't take it to Facebook or call extended family or write a carefully worded letter. I just stayed silent. Not out of weakness, out of strength. I had nothing left to prove. That same week, a letter arrived at my door. Thick envelope, unfamiliar handwriting. It was from Emily. Inside was a 5-page letter, handwritten in blue ink, written in a tone so sweet it made my stomach turn. It started with, "I'm sorry you felt excluded." Not, "I'm sorry I excluded you." It said things like, "I know we've had our differences, and I never meant for things to blow up like this." She went on to say that her boys missed their Aunt Madison. That family was too important to throw away over a misunderstanding. And then came the real purpose of the letter. She asked if I would reconsider transferring the house to our parents after all. She framed it as a fresh start, a way to mend fences. She even said, "We're willing to forget what was said at the party." That sentence made me laugh out loud, because it reminded me how deeply rooted the entitlement was, as if they were the ones offering grace. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope without writing a reply. Instead, I did something that scared me more than confronting my family ever did. I made an appointment with a therapist. When I walked into that office, I carried years of emotional baggage like it was strapped to my back. I thought I'd cry right away, but instead, I sat there for a full 2 minutes in silence before I finally said, "They called me an afterthought my whole life, and now they're shocked that I learned how to live without them." The therapist nodded. No judgment, no rush to fill the space. It was the first time someone looked at my pain and didn't try to explain it away. Didn't defend Emily, didn't say, "But they're your parents." She just listened. Over the next few sessions, we unraveled the threads of who I had been forced to be. The peacekeeper, the housemaid, the invisible sibling, the bank account. And slowly, I began to understand something powerful. Setting boundaries is not the same as burning bridges. Sometimes, boundaries are the only way to not burn yourself to the ground. The first holiday season after cutting ties was the quietest I had ever experienced. There were no frantic group texts from my mother about who was bringing what to dinner. No passive-aggressive reminders from Emily to bring a gift for the twins. No guilt-laced comments about how everyone else in the family contributes more. It was just me, a steaming cup of cider, and a blanket wrapped around my shoulders as snow dusted the window panes of my apartment. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel lonely. I felt peaceful. I decorated a small tree with ornaments I picked out myself. I lit candles that smelled like cinnamon and pine. I played old jazz records while baking gingerbread cookies from a recipe my grandmother once taught me. In her handwriting, it read, "Always double the cinnamon. That's where the magic is." And I thought of her, of the woman who had loved me without condition, who had never once compared me to anyone else, who made me feel like I was enough even when the world said otherwise. That winter, I started creating new traditions, not the kind based on obligation, but on intention. I hosted a Friendsmas dinner for the first time in my adult life. Just 4 people, 2 coworkers, my downstairs neighbor, and a friend from college I'd recently reconnected with. We laughed, we toasted, we shared stories about dysfunctional families and healing, and somewhere between the second glass of wine and the burnt cranberry pie, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. In therapy, I talked about how hard it had been to say no, how guilt still crept in sometimes when I passed a family at the park or saw a post of the twins in matching holiday pajamas, but I also talked about how I had started saying yes to myself more. Yes to sleep, yes to self-care, yes to weekends spent not babysitting or cleaning up after others, yes to applying for a promotion that would take me overseas for a year. It was terrifying, but I said yes anyway. When I accepted the position in London, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't inform Emily. I didn't feel obligated to explain myself anymore. Instead, I wrote a letter, not to send, but to keep. A letter that read, "To the version of me that waited by the door hoping for a thank you, I see you. To the girl who was told she was an afterthought, who learned to shrink herself so others could shine. I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that. But you're not her anymore. You are not a backup plan. You are not a caretaker by default. You are a woman who owns her story now." And I signed it, Madison. A few weeks before my flight, a final letter arrived in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from my mother. Inside was a single page. "We don't understand why you've shut us out. But your father says we should let you go, at least for now. If you ever come back, we'll be here. If not, I hope you're happy, even if it's without us." There was no apology, no accountability, just an open-ended statement that placed the burden back on me. I folded the letter and tucked it in a drawer, along with old birthday cards, school awards, and every broken promise that had shaped the woman I'd become. And on the day I boarded my flight, I didn't look back, because I wasn't running away. I was moving forward, not toward revenge, not toward proving a point, but toward freedom, a kind I'd never known until I gave myself permission to stop being the daughter they expected and start being the woman I chose.